The University of Michigan has many treasures, rare books, documents, artwork, classic buildings, but some of the most precious assets on campus are the people. Eva Rosenwald found one of those human treasures working with some of the university's other treasures in the basement of the Bentley Library.
At 4 libraries on the University of Michigan campus, the materials aren't for loan. They're just too rare, too valuable, and too utterly remarkable. I got a tour from 2 of the collection's curators, Pablo Alvarez and Brian Dunnigan.
This is a very unique and rare book called The Birds of America. They are engravings in copper plates, and they are colored, each of them by hand.
A very rare copy, one of only about 9 known to exist, of the first published map of the Old Northwest, kind of the original Big Ten territory, and it is the first time this ever really appeared in print.
The year is 1543. Nicolaus Copernicus published his treatise on the universe. It's the first time that somebody in a printed form argued that the sun is the center of the system.
This is a book from 1635 by a fellow named George Abbott, and it's called A Brief History of the World. And the world was younger then, as you can tell, because it's not very thick.
There are probably 2 people involved in this. A scribe is going to do the ruling of the manuscript, and then a second person is going to do some kind of illumination using red to track certain passages.
It's a highlighter. We call it
highlighters. Yeah, you could call it highlighters. This is the beginning of highlighting.
Primary source materials this precious, and often this old, need special care to survive, now and for future generations of students and scholars. That's when archivists call one of the longest tenured employees on campus, Jim Craven.
You consider yourself a conservator,
yes,
correct? So tell me what that means to you.
Well, it means that I'm working with materials that we're trying to make last for another several hundred years.
Some patients land on Jim's operating table looking pretty bleak.
So was this sitting on a shelf in this condition and someone came across it and then thought, ooh.
Yeah. So this is a work in process now, and we're lifting here. This is the spine of it. It's just completely off. So we'll have to reconstruct the joints here. This leather will have to be lifted, and we'll have to go into our collection of colors, and that will become the joint here. But we use this for reducing the thickness so that it can be inserted underneath where this is lifted, and then the new leather is inserted underneath. This is now a workable item, and it can be displayed. It can be used for research.
Depending on an initial assessment, materials in Jim's shop in the basement of the Bentley get torn apart, washed, dried, collated, protected, and sewn back together again. And sometimes the recipe for repair sounds a lot like a recipe. Snip, stir, simmer for 20 minutes, then blend. Voila! You've made what's called a paper slurry.
Now we can pour this in here. And with any luck then, the slurry will go where the paper isn't.
Why would a slurry not be attracted to the paper?
Well, it's like it's going down a drain right now. Now we can release most of the water.
Wow.
There we have our piece of paper.
That page patching process, known as leaf casting, has been used to repair damage to priceless university holdings.
This book is the Book of Martyrs, and it's from 1563. Here's one of the prints from the book, and here's where we've leaf cast. Now, this page had to be removed, and then we did the leaf casting process, and then it's put back, and it had to be put back into the book again.
Page by page, are there dozens
there are
and
some,
dozens in here?
There are some 60 pages in here that were leaf cast. This is how the covers came in. The book was in these covers. This is pretty well chewed up. We've saved as many scraps as we could. So we have more or less duplicated the cover.
The techniques of book and document conservation are hundreds, even thousands of years old, but there's still room for some creative problem solving. Associate archivist Ann Flowers collaborated with the preservation and conservation team to repair an old map of Michigan's Lenawee County that was falling apart and in danger of flaking away forever.
We came up with a system, which we've never seen anyone else use. We put a heat set tissue on the face of it to consolidate it and keep everything in register. Then we turned it over and peeled off the backing in strips. It had been adhered with wheat paste in the old days, and it peeled right off. And then we used wheat paste and added a layer of mulberry tissue. The very clever trick was the incompatible solvents, because the water that's in the wheat paste did not release the heat set tissue, and then the alcohol that we used to release the heat set tissue did not release the mulberry paper. It's now one of our standard procedures.
These clever solutions aren't limited to the materials themselves. Nothing about Jim's individually designed and handcrafted boxes is left to chance.
Now I see that you're holding it open with both hands.
Yes.
Does it not stay open on its own?
That was some purpose also. When someone's viewing this item, their hands will be occupied in holding the doors open.
And no longer available to...
They'll have to do something else in order to get their hands on the item.
Smart.
This is an original vellum deed for the sale of Mackinac Island by the Chippewa Indians to the British in 1781. Then along the left-hand margin there are 4 pictographic signatures of the Native American leaders who sold the island to the British. Jim was faced with doing the box for us for this piece. He didn't want to have any pressure directly on the seals, so this inner cover ends right here, and then when you fold the top down, there's a little bit of space above the seals.
After 61 years of protecting and repairing some of the University of Michigan's most precious holdings, perhaps the most valuable store of knowledge coming out of the Preservation and Conservation Department is Jim himself.
Mainly it's learning by doing. You start off watching Jim do it, and he talks you through it, and then he lets you try it, a step of it. And then when you master that, you get to try the next step. And so it's literally at the master's knee.
A repaired book shouldn't need attention for hundreds of years. So the longer Jim works in conservation, the more he appreciates that he'll never see it all.
This book is now unique. I'm not going to see it again, and I haven't seen it before. And this is part of what keeps you going, and there will be another challenge that will come up.